Coming up on today's exit interview, we are going to start with Drake Batherson. This is going to be about as positive an exit interview as we can get. With Drake Batherson, there was worry after the high ankle sprain. Was he going to be a guy who can stay healthy season in, season out? Now, back-to-back seasons where he plays 82 out of 82 games, sets a career high in goals, gets a lot of points. Plus, minus, still not great, but a lot better than last year, a lot less chilly than last year. And he's just a guy where the skill shines through every single game. He makes plays. His passing is unreal. And he's got that step back. Now, I'd still like to see him improve a little bit on the defensive end, Pilsy, but he's got that step that he didn't have for such a long time. And it's allowing him to create space for himself where he can then make plays.
Yeah, I think Drake Batherson, Ross, honestly, was sneaky, low key, one of the most consistent players on this team. When we talked about consistent players, we talk about Sanderson, we talk about Brady, we talk about Claude Giroux, which we should. But I was looking through his game logs, Ross, and I feel like there was times last season where you and I were like, okay, Drake Batherson has to get it going here. What's going on with him, et cetera, et cetera. But the longest stretch of games where he had no points, 4 games, a 4-game stretch of 0 points. So he was able to be very consistent throughout this season. And I feel like he got knocked down by a lot of Sens fans. But for a guy who's making less than 5 million, got 66 points, career high, and who lit it up on the power play, I believe with 22 power play points, like, I don't think he was deserving of all the kind of negative attention that went his way, because he had a really consistent year, in my opinion.
And at both ends of the ice too. I mean, better at least than what we saw in the last season, where he was just still recovering, and that was more so at the start. I know about midway through the last season, he still had 22 goals last year, which was a then career high. He had 18 more points than he had in his previous season, albeit that was the one where Aaron Dell took out his ankle, and he had to recover from that. But this year, yeah, it just felt top to bottom. It was consistent. He shot 14% back up to his average after a slow shooting year last year where he was under 9%. And I like him around that 18-minute mark. He's never going to be a guy, your first guy out on the penalty kill or whatnot, but for me, there's a few things that I'm hoping to see from him next year. I want to see him take another step forward when it comes to takeaways. I think that he could be one of those guys that's turning over pucks in the neutral zone that really helps the transition, because he's not going to be a guy that fast breaks too much. He's not going to be your speed demons like a Joseph or even other guys up front like Timmy and those guys, but he could be a guy. And I think Giroux's a perfect guy for Drake to model his game after, that it's all about vision, but also anticipation and knowing where your teammates are going to be and when. And I think we saw that very consistently this year from Drake Batherson. He's one of the biggest surprises, impressive to me this year. And I hope that he's just going to take another step forward and another step forward. Billsy, last year, out of his 22 goals, 14 were on the power play. Yeah. That only left 8 at even strength. He went from 8 even strength goals to 21 this year. And that's a huge sign of good things coming for Drake Batherson. I'm expecting him to set another career high next year. One of my hot takes going into this year, Pilsy, was that he'd be a point per game. Wasn't quite there. I might have the same one. I might run it back next year, because I do think the sky's the limit for Drake Batherson, and we've been banging that drum since his second year of junior, where he had that growth spurt, or first year post draft was where he exploded offensively. And I think that the sky is the limit for him, and still on that nice contract for another few years.
Yeah, and I think Drake Batherson is going to be one of the players that really benefits from Travis Green as a coach, because you look at Drake Batherson, you see all the skills, you see the size, like at 6'3", 205 pounds. This guy should be using his body to take advantage of loose puck battles and things like that more. I think with Travis Green, you're going to get him more conditioned. You're going to get him forechecking harder, working harder in those battles, because there's no reason why a guy of his size and skill should look bad on the ice, like not going in hard for loose pucks, getting beat defensively. Like there's just no reason for it. So I really think with Travis Green coming in here, hopefully he can demand a little bit more out of Batherson, and we get him on the right side of the plus minus stat here.
Yeah, he did that once during that shortened season where he was +4 in 46 games, 44 points. But there's not a handful of players on the Senators that have more offensive talent than Drake Batherson.
Yeah, he's right up there for sure.
So what are your expectations for him going into next season?
I think anywhere in the 70-point range is
And a
where you
plus
want to
player?
see, yeah, a plus player and just a little more, like I just mentioned there, just a little bit more passion. I want to see him use that frame a little better, be
Muck
harder
it
on the
up?
forecheck. Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to see Drake Batherson be in this range statistically consistently throughout the rest of his career, because this is where he can be.
3 years left at $4.95 million. Drake Batherson, a consistent member of the Ottawa Senators this year, and a guy who I believe is still scratching the surface. I'll say 70 points next season at least for Drake Batherson. I know it's a high bar to set, but if the Senators as a team are going to take another step forward, or maybe some people will say, hey, stay around that 60, 70 range, but let's play a more 200-foot game, because it is a lot of offense for him. Look, this is the first year in his career where he's had more takeaways than giveaways. That's a stat that I know it's a little bit of a tough stat to really nail down. Like it's a little bit more up to interpretation of whoever's doing the stats that night, but I'd like to see that trend continue for Drake Batherson. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Drake Batherson's last season and what he could do to take another step forward going in to the 2024-25 campaign.